Welcome to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast. Two faculty who love tech and love making it part of their work. I'm Marty Gensius, Associate Professor at Kent State University, and my co-host.
I'm Eric Perry. I'm a clinical faculty member at Southern New Hampshire University.
So, Eric, how was your week? We talked about maybe you getting a new tablet. I talked about getting some new equipment, which I'm recording this show with right now. But what happened on your end?
So I ended up ordering a tablet. I went with the 128 gig model, which they didn't have in stock, of the Samsung A8. So in testing some of the other versions, the older versions, and then the light model, I had some Bluetooth issues in terms of responsiveness. I really wanted to be able to use a keyboard case with it. So they let me, hook one up that they had laying around, just to kind of mess around with it. And I wanted the bigger screen. So waiting on that now, but I'm excited to get it in and kind of link it up with the rest of the stuff I have here.
So the question I have to ask is, did you order it from the store that you demoed it in?
Yeah, which usually I don't. Usually I don't. But, the customer service was good. The price difference was negligible. So it was easier just to order it, I think, while I was there and have it done.
Yeah, well, I've been getting itchy waiting for new technology. And to be honest, after last week's discussion, I thought maybe I should get yet another tablet and did not pull the trigger. Tried a couple of times with a loaded gun on Amazon and did not pull the trigger. So I'm waiting for the new Apple releases that'll come up in about a month or so and see what happens there. I did get a new microphone. Finally, it came in, and I've got a new mixing board. So we'll play with that for a while and see how it goes. This week was kind of crazy because it was the end of our summer classes, and that meant lots of grading to do. Right. And that is always an issue for me because I really don't like repetitive tasks that I have to pay enough attention to that I'm not screwing up. If it's just filing papers or sorting papers, I can do something else and it won't affect it. But with grading, you've got to have some focus in it. But it's a repetitive task. So the app I want to talk about this week is TextExpander. And it is the sole purpose of TextExpander is to take short macros. Those would be symbols or words that you've collected together. And when you put that in, it will expand out to a whole set of text that you might have written many, many times. So with these types of programs, and there's a variety of them, TextExpander is the one that I've kind of landed on and sat with and worked with for years. It comes in really handy with responding to essays, responding to papers, responding to exams where people are making the same mistakes on the same question. So all you have to do is put in a set of characters. So I use it for grading in some cases and have to personalize it when I'm grading to a degree. But for repetitive stuff like that, it's great. I also use it for response to lots of email. I work on a listserv that has 6,000 members and then another listserv that has around 1,500 members. And I get lots of the same questions from the listserv. And so using something like a text assistance is very, very helpful for the same question. So I don't know, you've had some experience or exposure with this. I can talk more about how they actually work, but you're talking about a different app.
Yeah, so the one I've used and actually just started using this week, because it's funny that you talk about it, because I was helping a friend out who's out on leave, and part of her responsibilities is to respond to emails from students about our residency experience. So they'll have a lot of questions about travel and things like that. And she has a whole set of responses for each of those questions that tend to come in a lot that give some more detail. So she kind of walks that line of what we post and, those questions that'll tend to come in even though the information's there, or, they'll ask for additional details. So I have this Word document with all these standard responses. Even before in our previous show, I had some of these lined up to test. So when you emailed me about, hey, I'm giving this a try, the TextExpander, I went in and tried TextBlaze, which is a Chrome extension that does it's similar. So it's free. It allows you to use these same macros, and what you'll do is you'll set these up, and it's a / and then a short phrase that you'll put in that it'll then recognize and then put in that text from that macro. So I've used it a lot this week for email. And it seems to work out really well. I think the biggest issue is that if it's something you don't use a lot, then you forget what those phrases are and you need the key up for you somewhere. So I have it like sitting on my other screen until I remember what those macros are. And then, as I use them more, I tend to remember the ones I use more often. It worked really well grading in D2L. So that's the system that we use, grading and Turnitin. So I had to grade some papers and similar types of things, giving similar types of feedback or thoughts about reflections in assignments that are kind of moving forward or stacked. It was really, really helpful this week. I think it'll be even more helpful as I start to remember more of those, quick macro.
To be honest with you, I forget them too, but I've been using it for years. That doesn't mean I remember them any better. So when I'm ready to, there's a few that I remember because I'm using them daily. But when I'm ready to like do an assignment that I've done in a class the previous year, I don't remember what the macros are that I created for it. So I'll copy and paste it into a separate like Word doc or any type of text doc on the side. So as I'm using it in the assignment, I can refer to that and remember what the responses are, and more importantly, what the macros are. So to explain it to listeners, you talk about a /. I saw that when I looked at TextBlaze. Do you only use a /? Is it the only way it's triggered, or can you use anything? Do you know?
No, it's a / only. So that's what keys the extension off to know that you're putting in a macro. And it does have another limitation that I think is interesting. So it actually links to your Chrome account, your Google account. Mm-hmm. So if you're using a different Google account, you need that extension then on that account in order to be able to use it.
Yeah. Is it only work with Google apps? I mean, when you say email, are you using Gmail and then it works in there? Are you using any Chrome browser-based system it would work with, like DTL or whatever?
Yeah, so it should work within Chrome fine, and tested it fine there. It worked within Outlook and Gmail.
Okay.
It just seems to be when you're logged into a different Google account in Chrome, you have to switch in order to get access to your macros for that account.
Yeah, well, I looked at it, and of course the competitor or one of the competitors is TextExpander, and I typed in, tell me the differences between TextExpander and TextBlaze. And TextExpander has created a whole page on what TextBlaze can't do, but supposedly TextExpander does. When we talk about snippets, for example, I run this listserv. I get requests probably 5 or 6 a day from doctoral students who want to post their research to the listserv, research request. That's appropriate and etiquette. I appreciate it, but I've got to write these letters at least 5 times a day. So I use, and I think you can use any prompt with TextExpander, but I use a semicolon followed by a letter or number combination, because the idea here, like you do with backslashes, is generally the backslash will trigger it and we'll read what's happening after the backslash. But rarely do you put a semicolon with no space in a document, so these things won't pop up accidentally. So I have one called a semicolon CESSUR1 and semicolon CESSUR3. And what it generates, and I think this happens for TextBlaze too, from what I've read about it, it will generate a whole email, and you can set that up so you can have a namespace at the beginning and it stops there. You put the name in. You can put an email address. You can personalize it if you put those spaces into the actual text. And so I just go do that macro. The email pops up, and then I put the person's name in, and I put in their email address, or if there's some concern, there's a space for me to write about those concerns in there. Press done, and I'm out. And it's a great time saver and also sort of mind saver, because you don't have to waste your brain cells figuring that stuff out.
Right. And which I think is neat. And I will say the limitations for TextBlaze for the free account are many. So there's a lot of features I think that open up with the pro version. And that includes like what you're talking about, actually creating dynamic forms. So it'll allow you to create, so you can tab through just those spaces you've left and enter the information instead of just putting in the text. And then almost like an autofill kind of function that you can use that works within Excels or tables that allows you to autofill certain data. So depending on what you're doing, I can really see the utility in it. But the base features were enough for me to, get some utility out of it.
If you go to the priced section, and because I looked at pricing, TextExpander, I think, is $3.33 a month. And TextBlaze is $2.99, I think, a month. I looked at some other programs like Typhonator, which is only a Mac-based program, and that is $19 a year. So these things kind of balance out. Most all of them have trial periods, so you can find the one that you love or it seems to work for you. TextExpander works on Windows, Mac, iPhone, and iPad, but not on Android. I tried to find some way to, if there was an Android version of it, and it's not. But it does work cross-platform and really works on any apps that are open at the time. You can use it. Talks about security. The site talks a lot about SOC2 security, which I had never heard about before, but apparently it's Service Organization Control Type 2. It's a cyber security compliance framework that ensures third-party service providers store and process client data securely. It's created by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So if you can't trust a certified public accountant, who can you trust?
Right.
And so, like I said, I've settled on TextExpander because it works on multiple devices and at least works on the two platforms that I work on, which are Windows and Mac. And I'm disappointed there isn't something. I think there's apps for Android, but nothing like TextExpander.
Well, I think it's cool that you mentioned security too, and we could potentially do a whole nother episode on this. So if you're using a platform or you're using a third-party like portal app, there's a few out there like Company Portal and those that basically serve as your company VPN. And universities have several of those. It can limit the utility of some of these apps, and it can block them if they're not properly secured. So I think that's one thing to consider too, especially if you're thinking about mobile devices and using some of these apps. Because I've noticed in trying out a couple of different things, having this installed on the Android, it will pop up and block anything that pulls data, and saves data in a certain way without certain security measures. And I think it's something that I want to look at a little closer myself to see what that is. But it sounds like this is something that may help with that particular issue.
Yeah, I would like to talk about universities and how they seem to be managing what apps can access their data and what can't now. I never had that problem in the past, and maybe this is an idea for another show, but I recently was trying to do unified calendar because I have an iCloud calendar, I have a university calendar, and I have a Gmail calendar, and I'm trying to get everybody to do stuff on Gmail, and that's how I set it up. But the university is a staunch Outlook and Microsoft calendar system, and I just do not like that interface in lots of ways. When we talked about that, I think the previous show, we talked a little bit about the new Outlook is kind of funky. But so I'm trying to unify it. And when I tried to do that calendar and use a particular calendar and sign it up with my university account, the university rejected it and said, we won't allow you to access your data through this calendar. So the university's kind of tightening the ship around what they'll let you how you'll access and how you won't. So I'm still looking for that perfect platform unified calendar. So maybe we'll talk about calendars show, because I know that's cool. Do you have any other ideas or thoughts about the next episode?
I don't know. I'm hoping I'll have a tablet to talk about for sure. To start to walk through that. And then
I'm hoping I won't have a tablet to talk about.
Yeah. Give it another month. You can make it. You can do it. I understand the impulse though.
Yeah. Well, we will hopefully have you all listening to us in the next episode. And how can you get involved? Well, if you've got a tech question, if you're trying to figure out how to do something with technology or have an idea to share, email us at the podtalknetwork@gmail.com or call us and leave a message at 330-333-1240. And we'll play your question in the podcast and try and get an answer for you. Our bumper music is from Philip Gross, Rast, from the Free Music Archive. That's it for today, and thanks for subscribing to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast. You can find us by searching Apple Podcasts for the Tech Savvy Professor. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Google Play Music. Look for our other shows like Circular Firing Squad on thepodtalk.net. Thanks for listening to the Tech Savvy Professor.